What is up, everybody? Escape211 here, and we're going to be covering this Mech Arena roundup. This one is a doozy, all right? So definitely want to cover this kind of stuff. There's already been a lot of chatter. I've talked to some of you personally about it, but I figured it made the most sense to just make a video on it. I know it was a little later. I actually wanted to do this yesterday. It just was a long day. So working on it now, but that's okay. All right, so we're going to go each of the 4 main points that they lay out here. The first one, pretty simple, just this number 1, saying that there's going to be more variants of these legendary weapons that they have. Not really a huge deal here. The only thing that probably matters to any of us is the Pod Gun 12, just because we want to see if it's meta-worthy, especially given the changes to the other weapons, specifically dish launchers, to see how the pod guns perform. The 8s and the 10s have been pretty decent. But, you know, not up to par for where it will be endgame worthy, which you'd expect out of an 8 or 10 energy weapon. So, you know, the 12s, and if we see a higher variant like a 16, hopefully, you know, then we'll see how those two are endgame. Particle beams, they haven't really performed for me, so I'm not too excited about those. I mean, cool that we're getting more, but I don't think it's really going to change a whole lot for us. But now let's get into the meat and potatoes here, where we get these balance adjustments or these changes to different weapons that they're covering in number 2 here. First is arc torrents, all right? They're first saying that the optimal range for these will increase to all variants from 0 to 15 meters to 0 to 30 meters. And with that, the max range will remain the same across all ranks. Basically, this is just saying if you look at the growth record of the optimal range and the max range of the arc turrets, they start at 0 to 15 at the low stars and then go up to 0 to 30 for the optimal range. And I think they start at like 20 meters and go up to 40 meters for the max range. They're saying this is all just going to be flat across. If you're someone who's getting it from the gear hub, this isn't going to change or affect you really at all. When you get it at 4 stars, I'm pretty sure it's already at that 30 meters and then the 40 meters max. This is really just going to affect like someone who bought like a 2-star arc turret 12 or something like that early on. They're going to get a little bit of a benefit there, just because you don't have to upgrade it to get those benefits. So kind of nice, but not really anything that's going to affect most people. So not really a huge problem there. And then they say that it will be possible to increase the max range with implants like we've always done with that rare or legendary one into the 50 to 60-ish meters max range, but there will be damage fall off beyond optimal range. All right, so we're going to see some damage fall off on this weapon, and it seems like fall off is kind of the thing they've been adding in this one, or this update or these roundups. So don't love that. That's not the greatest thing. And to further make it worse, they're saying the damage per magazine will be adjusted. Basically, its overall damage will get a knockdown. This isn't massive, but considering that we're going to see the damage fall off plus this, yeah, that's a bit much, especially given where arc turrets are. When you first get arc turrets at tier 3, they will dominate, they will overperform for you, and maybe a little more so now, just because you'll have some of that added, you know, starting optimal range and max range, but again, not really going to affect those who are getting from the gear hub too much. But as you progress, they may edge out a little sooner than they do. At top end, these do not perform well, and I'm seeing less and less and less, like if you're getting to super competitive top end where you're at like 9K or higher. But for most people, you certainly still see this in the you know, 9K and below. So will this start to edge out in some of that top area, and you might only see this at like 7K? I'm not totally sure. I don't think this was necessary. Arc Turret already kind of is in a weird nebulous spot between other weapons. Ember Gun outperforms it. Fragment Gun, which is only a rare, seems to do like almost competitively with it. And with this, I think that, you know, frag guns will edge it out. But, you know, it's just, I didn't think it was necessary. So already not great for the arc torrents and the changes overall. But here's where it gets worse for most people, right? This is the big one. The disc launcher changes here. All right, so beyond optimal range, anything beyond optimal range damage beyond that will decrease. So anything beyond 60 meters will be decreased. So that sucks because a lot of people function with this outside of the optimal range. All right, so and these changes, splash damage will reduce the further the enemy is from the point of impact. And splash damage will no longer be able to deal increased damage to the side and rears of mechs. All right, so in the typical scenario for most people with disc launchers, you would try to shoot like a sniper that's hiding behind a wall at 100 meters. You'd shoot the ground, you'd shoot the wall near them. you will get a triple damage nerf in that sense, because you're likely outside of 60 meters, you're hitting them not at the center of the radius, at the side of it, and you're not getting side or rear damage. So massive damage nerfs here for typical disc launcher use. So that is big. However, I will say that this weapon, kind of a hot take here, but this weapon has been around for, I don't know, since beta. This game has been in the game for over 2 years and has been very dominant in the game. Super dominant in the meta, all right? Disc launchers being top end S tier for 2 years is insane. That's like a pretty stale meta, right? For 2 years to have one thing dominate the meta. I know, obviously, there's a lot that people do to buy and invest into these weapons, and that can suck depending on when you get them. But there also has to be a concern about when the meta needs to shift, when things need to change, and something that's been dominant in the meta for over 2 years, yeah, that's a long time, all right? I know not everybody's been around for 2 years, but I'm talking about the lifestyle or the lifespan of the game. So that's a concern. However, on the flip side, like I said, there's a lot of cost involved, but also, as we know, the top-end meta is largely dominated by sniper weapons and disc launchers. They counter each other, specifically disc launchers countering the sniper weapons. So without seeing sniper changes in here, because there won't be in the rest of this, I worry about the state of where the meta is going to go. And mostly with Railgun 12. Even though EM rifles is also a pain to deal with, they've also been nerfed at other times and have changes that have happened to them specifically. Even though they still do a lot of damage up close, you know, it's arguable there. But Railgun is a totally different case, especially in the more recent meta. We've had railguns for a long time, but we only had Railgun 16, and that was only a single use case in beta. And then as things changed and you could duplicate them and put them on heavy mechs, that still was problematic, but heavy mechs were not, and you know, historically have not been the best. So, you know, dual 16s wasn't the worst thing in the world. It still worked in the meta. But now we have Railgun 12s, all right? Railgun 12s on medium mechs where most weapons, most everything shines, especially in a low HP meta and damage is king. That's really all you need. There's not really a need at all for the heavy class, in my opinion, based on the way the game is going. So to have Railgun 12s, a sniper weapon that has 0 to 120 meters for optimal range, where you can be a surge with Railgun 12s, which is super popular right now, and dominate the meta and have crazy versatility at all ranges, is nuts, all right? Disc launchers was one of the things to help keep that in check, as well as just the sniper meta. And now that they made these massive changes to disc launcher, I worry about where that sits. That's going to be a big thing that I'm going to watch, and what I'm worried about, and what probably a lot of other people are worried about, because yeah, the top end meta, that's going to be problematic. I am worried I'm going to see at least 3 sniper builds in every top end hangar now. There's already at least 2 typically. I'm worried that we're going to see 3, maybe even 4. That sounds crazy, but like it could be the case depending on how this goes. But yeah, that's insane. That's going to be difficult to deal with. That said, I don't hate the idea of these changes. Ooh, hang on, sneeze coming. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so kind of hot take, and then I don't hate those changes, but at the same time, I fear for what it means for the game. I actually still think, because of how disc launchers play and their low exposure and their crazy big radius, it's still going to be an effective weapon. It's just not going to be as effective at dealing with snipers. But I still think it's going to be very useful for a lot of people. But that's just my thinking so far. We'll see how that actually plays out when we get into the meta. Next up, we have Nade launchers. And we have Cry launchers. I'm saying them both together just because it kind of goes together. They're basically getting a flat damage buff, which, you know, not bad. Here's my problem with these weapons, though. They are difficult to actually land your shots with. So just a flat damage increase isn't really solving the problem of the weapon for me. A damage increase on these is nice, but if you're already struggling to hit your target, who cares? So you would need either a better pathfinding system to be adjusted for these weapons, or a slightly larger, you don't want massive, but a slightly larger radius to be able to hit targets with it. because as it stands, these weapons underperform for most people. Now, what's interesting is that sometimes they can do well in actual real PvP, depending on how many people are camping. But generally speaking, they're not performing that well for most people, and that's why you don't see them on the field. I don't think a damage hike is going to do it for them. But we will see. We'll see if that changes anything for these weapons. Yeah. Next up, we got miniguns. Miniguns getting a slight damage buff. Again, we're seeing just damage buffs here across the board. Kind of helpful, but like, why? This isn't a massive damage buff, but miniguns have already been performing well. I would say miniguns are like high A tier. I wouldn't say they're quite S tier. You don't see them as much as you see snipers and disc launchers end game. But you do see them, so, you know, they're a pretty solid weapon. They're a fun weapon. I like a lot of things about them, and I think damage-wise, they've been performing well. I don't think a slight damage hike is necessary. Maybe they're thinking this could replace where disc launchers are, but they perform incredibly different. They're a direct fire weapon. They're not really going to deal with the opposite meta of the sniper meta I was just talking about, so this isn't really going to change things, except make miniguns slightly better in a not so necessary way. I don't get it. I don't really think this was necessary. You know, some people argue it wasn't even worth it because miniguns didn't need it. I kind of agree. So, you know, I think this is I don't know. I don't know about this change. I mean, I don't think it's really going to change anything though. It's gonna, you know, maybe see a slight uptick in minigun use, but that's about it. My nose is itchy. All right, next we got chain guns. Chain guns also getting a damage increase, but a more substantial one. This is good. Chain gun needs this, but the issue for me with chain gun is just that it's in a weird spot. Let me see if I remember this correctly. So minigun has more max range, right? I think 20 to 30 meters-ish more. I want to say chain guns is like 100 meters, and miniguns are 130 meters. Something like that. So it's not getting more max range. It has better optimal range, I think by like 10 to 15 meters or something like that. So it basically is the same thing as miniguns, except minigun does what it does a little bit better. If you were more mid-range, chain gun would be better, but both of them have the same projectile speed, similar in the sense accuracy. Minigun has more spread, but it's spitting out a lot of bullets, so it doesn't really matter. So when minigun is generally getting more damage and got a little bit of a damage increase, I don't think you're going to see chain guns used more. Maybe it evens the playing field a little bit, but I don't really know. I don't really think this solves or gives a unique identity to the chain gun, I guess is what I'm saying. It's so close to the minigun and slightly below it based on its max range that I just don't see why you don't use the minigun. Plus, this is a paid weapon still. I don't see anyone picking this up over top of the minigun, which they already have access to through the gear hub, generally speaking. So, I mean, nice to see. I actually have chain gun 8s on my free-to-play account, so I'm kind of excited to bring those back out and see if they'll actually perform well, but I don't think this is going to affect most people. So, not really one I care about. So then they're also saying that they're working hard on the new PVE campaign. This is the annoying thing, because in this, they say that they're going to be featuring one of the legendary attacker mechs. This is a bummer to me, because it most likely means that it's going to be in the paid end for like 2 stars or something cheap so that people can buy it. Instead of making a new mode that everyone can play like they did in the test way with Ares, that would have been perfect to do. Plus, it gives everyone a chance to get that skin. They're saying, no, let's focus on an attacker mech that is probably outside of reach, either in the gear hub or for most people to just generally get in some way that they'll have to buy to participate. I hope that's not the case. I hope they will give us other options and say, like, you can either use this attacker mech or something else, just like in the test mode or the testing mode that they did with Ares, where some of the weapons you could choose between. Because otherwise, this is aggravating. If you bring out a new mode and you don't allow everybody to have an experience with it or the potential to have an experience with it, that's not good. And they also say this is aimed at experienced players, although it's possible for players at any stages to enjoy, which basically says to me it's going to be for those who have gotten through the gear hub and have access to those attacker mechs like Onyx or Scorpius, or whoever it's going to be focused on. But those who are early game can still buy it if they want to. So I just don't like the way that's positioned. Whereas Ares, like, even if you were a brand new player in that other one, you could still participate in that one. You could get Ares within like that first week and still be able to get through most of the content like I did. That was perfect. I don't know why they're doing it this way for the first one. They already had the other one pretty much laid out. Just go with it. Like, it doesn't make sense. I hate that. And then lastly, they said there's a set of new modifiers that are going to be coming out. For me, I hope that there's a potential for either a free implant removal, generally speaking, or they work into the modifiers some type of an implant removal discount. Just because of the changes that they've said above, a lot of people that have like arc turrets or disc launchers are probably thinking, I need to switch some stuff around. So I hope that that is in consideration. But overall speaking, yeah, I'm not loving these. I will say it's a mixed bag because there are certain things like chain gun is good. Nade launchers and cryo nades are nice. Minigun felt kind of unnecessary. Arc turret felt unnecessary. Disc launchers is a big hit, especially again without looking at the other things in the meta that are problematic right now. That's what concerns me. I know a lot of people look at this and they walk away thinking two things. One, they think, oh man, they're just doing this to boost sales and get the things that they want sold. Not entirely. I don't see that as being the case. They gave a buff to miniguns. They gave a buff to nade launchers. Those are both things you can get on the gear hub. Sure, they gave a buff to chain gun, but again, that's only because the weapon was super underperforming. I don't think you're going to see an increase in sales on the chain gun. So, you know, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, oh no, they did this to the disc launcher so that people buy the pod gun. I don't necessarily know if the pod gun is going to be a disc launcher replacement and be S tier. I don't feel that way right now, just given how the weapon plays out, but we will see. I don't really know. You know, so I know though, when they make these changes, there's lots of reasons to do it. It's not just because they are trying to make money. I'm sure there are factors about their revenue that they are worried about for this kind of stuff, but I don't see that as just the case. It just doesn't look that way based on what they're changing here. The things that they changed or knocked down are things that have been in the game for a long time. They're probably trying to make way for other things, and some of those things are things you can already get on the gear hub with in-game currency. So it's seemingly to me not just all about money. The PVE stuff feels very money-centric to me, just because it's already focusing on a certain group of people. But you know, that's neither here nor there. And other people are also worried that this is going to turn into war robots, and this is going to be a buff nerf cycle. But honestly, guys, I mean, that has never happened in Mech Arena. Never. Okay, they have done buffs and nerfs, and that certainly happens. But the frequency at which we see buffs and nerfs is really low in comparison. This is not a month-by-month balance patch that they're doing where they continually nerf certain things to the ground, buff other things that are on sale. You don't see that cycle happening all the time. Some of this might be related to sales. Some of it doesn't look like it is. So already, like, I don't get an inkling of that. And because we don't see these balance patches like hardly ever in Mech Arena, I'm not fearing that right now. If we start seeing this every month, okay, I'm with you. But until that happens, I'm kind of in that camp. So yeah, I don't love these changes. I think to some degree, some of it's more warranted than people want to admit, even though the disc launcher changes suck. We have had disc launchers as top in the game for a very long time. So I do think it is time to shake up the meta in some way. I just don't know exactly how that's going to be, and I partially feel like what they did is not covering enough of it. But we will have to see how this actually shakes out to know where everything sits. But that's my general take. You guys can certainly leave me comments, as you always do. I will do my best to answer any questions you have, and we will see you out there on the battlefield.